free as a bird, as innocent as a child, hers was a God-given voice to express the joy of living, perfect for a song like Schubert's Heidenröslein.
Sein Knab ein Röslein stehen, Röslein auf der Heide, war so jung und morgenschön, lief schnell es nach zu sehen, saß mit vielen Freuden. Röslein, 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 Röslein auf der Heide.
Elisabeth Schumann. As you heard, a voice of clarity and purity, yet with a compelling warmth, an ability to captivate you with a single note. She told stories in her songs. Let me play you a number from Winterreise, Die Post. Now, most singers of today concentrate on the cantering of the horse, but the words and the chromatic harmonies in the second part of each verse dwell on the sense of loss, of not getting a letter from the true love who lives in the town that the post is coming from. Mein Herz, my heart, my heart. Schumann here slows the tempo slightly, colours the word, and touches the heart.
Von der Straße her ein Posthorn klingt. Was hast es, dass es so hoch aufspringt, mein Herz? Was hast es, dass es so hoch aufspringt, mein Herz, mein Herz? Die Post bringt einen Brief für dich. Was drängst du denn so wunderlich, mein Herz, mein Herz? Die Post bringt einen Brief für dich, mein Herz, mein Herz. Was drängst du denn so wunderlich, mein Herz, mein Herz? Nun ja, die Post kommt aus der Stadt, wo ich ein liebes Liebchen hat, mein Herz. Wo ich ein liebes Liebchen hat, mein Herz, mein Herz. Willst du wohl einmal hinübersehen und fragen, wie es dort mag gehen? Mein Herz, mein Herz. Willst du wohl einmal hinübersehen, mein Herz, mein Herz, und fragen, wie es dort mag gehen? Mein Herz, mein Herz.
Die Post, Schubert. Elisabeth Schumann in 1933, accompanied on the piano by her second husband, Karl Alvin, at a time when her stage career was nearing its end and her career as a leader singer was blossoming. On the stage, her voice was ideal for the young Sophie in Richard Strauss's Der Rosenkavalier. The composer thought so too. He once said he'd conceived of Sophie as a minor part, but when Schumann sang the part, Act 2 was Sophie's act. A handsome boy, the cavalier bearing the flower, presents her with a silver rose, sprinkled about with attar of roses. Sophie swoons with delight, and so did her audience when Schumann floated her voice seemingly effortlessly. The role wasn't composed with her voice in mind, but it's been in everybody's mind since she sang it and recorded it. The presentation of the Silver Rose, Elisabeth Schumann and Maria Olszewska. Once in South Africa, a newspaper captioned a photograph, Madame Schumann in the part of Rosie in the opera Rosenkavalier. The recording we heard was made in Vienna in 1933, Schumann in her heyday. She was actually 45, but her voice was perfectly preserved for another 10 years or more, partly because she nearly always used her head voice and avoided heavier roles. Strauss apparently wanted her to sing Salome, but wisely she refused. Eva in Meistersinger was her heaviest role. Schumann was a Saxon, born in 1888, and her first major engagement was with the Hamburg Opera at the age of 21. In another couple of years she had married a young architect called Walter Puritz. But in Hamburg there was a lover, a young conductor at the opera who provoked the most dramatic event in Schumann's life. His name was Otto Klemperer. Things got so bad that husband Puritz challenged Klemperer to a duel. The conductor said he wouldn't fight, so Puritz decided to take action. He booked front row seats for Lohengrin at the opera, immediately behind the conductor. When Klemperer was about to begin Act 3, Puritz called out, "Turn round, Klemperer!" And when he did so, he slashed him about the head with a riding whip before being dragged away. Klemperer immediately announced, "Herr Puritz has struck me because I am in love with his wife." I can imagine that Schumann thought of this incident in her next performance as Zerlina, when she consoled her lover Mazzetto after Don Giovanni has beaten him up. Well, if you'd been in Studio B at his master's voice in Hayes on the 7th of June 1926, you would have seen this gorgeous-looking soubrette, Elisabeth Schumann, recording that Mozart aria from Don Giovanni. That's a fairly early recording of hers, but now here she is even further back in time, in 1915, to give an idea of what she sounded like during her Hamburg days, or just after. This is a taste of the aria that Ännchen sings in the last act of Weber's Der Freischütz. Trübe Augen, Liebchen, taugen. Schumann as Ännchen in Weber's Der Freischütz. The affair with Klemperer ran a short course. It seems he brought it to an end. But Schumann's feelings for him seem to remain. In a sketch for an autobiography, never realized unfortunately, she writes how a liaison is that much more intense when the couple are united in artistry as well as love. She doesn't actually mention Klemperer's name. Schumann eventually went back to her husband. I talked some time ago to her son Gerd Puritz about his mother. In particular, was she in private life the serene and happy person that her singing suggests?
Yes, in fact, this was the most prominent character in her whole personality. This comes out beautifully in her singing, of course, and it perhaps is the reason why she kept her voice so fresh for so long. She sang almost right up to her death, until she was 63. And she always said that relaxation was so important. Relax the body while you're singing, and only the very few muscles and the chords, of course, which are necessary for producing the note should be working and should be tense, but everything else loose. And then she said that the breath is the most important thing, and the tone should somehow float on the breath. And she used to take a very deep breath down into the abdomen, and then press the abdomen in and let the air float out. She likened the whole windpipe and larynx and so on, mouth, to a chimney.
Did she like teaching?
At first she didn't. She was really rather afraid of teaching. She thought it was so technical and rather boring. But then she started to like it, and especially at the Curtis Institute in America. And it was interesting for her, and I think she was able to convey quite a bit of her own technique to the pupils, because she had quite a number of gifted ones over there, and some have made a good career, like Claire Watson, who sang here at Covent Garden, as you know.
I often wonder what it must be like to be the child of such a famous artist, and whether you think that perhaps your childhood would have been happier if you'd seen more of your mother. Did you miss her much?
I did, yes. Perhaps at the time not consciously, but now looking back, I think I must have done. Anyway, I was always waiting for her. Not only because she showered me with presents when she came back. I can see her still coming into the room and laden with presents, and then she asked, "Where's my little Schnuck? Oh, how are you? There you are," and so on. Then she gave me all these presents. But it wasn't only that. It was because I wanted her radiant personality, and I felt safe with her, and She was such a marvelous companion. Never a word, you shouldn't do this and all. She was very, very generous in that respect. That she was such a famous singer, of course, seemed quite natural to me. I took that for granted. I mean, she took me to the concerts, her concerts, at a very early age. I was about 4, 5 or so. And I sat there, as far as I can remember, spellbound. And then when all these people thronged forward, I thought, this must be like that. I never knew it otherwise. So to me, she wasn't a unique person, which she in fact was. She was just my mother.
I was amazed with her when I was once with her. Suddenly there were bird noises in the room.
Oh,
and
yes.
I didn't know where they came from until I found it was her. Was this a lifelong preoccupation?
It almost was, yes, when she was a child. I don't know how old, but anyway, she had just a few teeth lost. And then she was suddenly able to imitate her canary bird, which she had, and she kept this on through all her life. And whenever there was a silence in the room at a big party, she started to trill, yes, like the canary. And there are some records, of course, also where she uses this.
Elisabeth Schumann came to give recitals and to teach at the Summer School of Music at Bryanston in Dorset. William Glock and I went to see her in her hotel. As we went to meet her for the first time, there seemed to be this aviary in her sitting room. But when Madame Schumann turned to us from the window, she was laughing at us by way of greeting. Her master classes were spiced with laughter. One young-looking girl sang a love song one day, and Schumann stopped her, saying, "My dear, very nice, but I don't think you have really understood the words. May I translate them for you?" The pupil said, "Madame Schumann, I am a German refugee." Schumann persisted, "Ah, but you are so young, perhaps you have not been in love already." "Madame Schumann, I am married with 2 small children." "Ah, then I'd better not say any more. Just sing, my dear." At about this time, Schumann recorded for the BBC some of her thoughts about singing in her charming, very nearly right English.
The first and the most important thing is, of course, the breath. It is a pity we have not a television here, so I could show you better how to breathe. But in a few words, perhaps, I can make me understandable enough. The breath is to take very deep. And as long as you sing your phrase, you keep your tummy in as much as it's possible. That is the support. The support is the most important thing of singing. And you never should leave it out. Also a piano tone, you must sing with and support. Of course, the pupil first overdoes perhaps the breathing. It is the pupil is too stiff in the whole body. The body must be relaxed. The soul must be relaxed. The throat must be relaxed. Only not your support and the concentration of the lips. The lips produce the vowels. If you sing A, E, O, U, you must be absolutely concentrated with your lips. And the tone mustn't be disturbed through the changing of the vowels. For instance, when you sing A, E, O, U, you see, I don't change something in my tone at the place of the tone, you know. It is always the same. If I sing an A, if I sing an E, if I sing an O, if I sing an U, the tone doesn't move, and the lips form the vowel. When you sing in any language, je t'aime, I love you, ich liebe dich, you see, I don't change. It is the same place, because for this note, it doesn't exist another place.
Schumann teaching. In 1921, she and Richard Strauss did a concert tour of 16 recitals together in North America. Some interesting points emerged from her letters home. One was that Strauss urged her to hold her top notes for longer than written. Another complained that sometimes at the piano he would depart from the text of his own songs in such an improvisatory fashion that she could scarcely find her way. But of course this was the age, towards the end of a long age, when putting the music across was considered as important as accuracy. As I said earlier, by modern standards, Schumann is sometimes wayward, usually in the matter of slowing up the music for expressive purposes. Maybe you wouldn't notice it if you didn't know the piece very well or were following the score. But what I think you do notice is how the music gets across to you, its meaning intensified, or at least properly revealed. As for her portamenti, the posh word for scoops, they became part of the music. Imitated, they would be intolerable, but used so spontaneously they act as seasoning does to a dish. And how she caresses her words and phrases, as in this Hugo Wolf song, Nun vandra Maria. Joseph is trying to encourage the tired-out Mary to continue on their weary way for the sake of the unborn child. You can hear the donkey and the piano accompaniment plodding away.
You
Hugo Wolf, Nun Wandra Maria, a recording made during Elisabeth Schumann's finest years, the 1920s and 30s. For many years she was a member of the Vienna State Opera, together with her almost lifelong friend Lotte Lehmann. She was honored and applauded in many countries and in Germany and Austria until the Nazis made life impossible for her. And then she made America her home. Her second husband was the conductor and pianist Karl Alvin. Quite a few of her recordings were made with him. Number 3 was the Viennese dermatologist Karl Krüger. After 28 years of opera and operetta, Schumann's last stage appearance was in 1937, and from that time she concentrated on oratorio and, more especially, Lieder. She sang the occasional song in English because she loved England and North America, and it was mostly here in London that she made her more than 150 records, including this ravishing one of the quintet from Die Meistersinger. Friedrich Shaw sings sax, Schumann, Eva, and Loritz Melchior sings a lovely quiet line as Walter. It's a wonder that Schumann sounds so lyrical and fresh, because at the session, Melchior came in wrong time and time again, despite Barbirolli trying to cue him. After 5 takes, Schumann said she would do just one more take. She really couldn't manage any more. Take 6 was perfect. No hint of fatigue or frustration as she introduces this golden performance of one of Wagner's most exquisite pages. quintet from Meistersinger. Schumann, dear old Gladys Parr as Lena, Ben Williams as David, Melchior and Shaw, with the LSO under John Barbirolli. Schumann loved jewels, clothes, her pet dogs, and of course her family, her son Gert and his English wife Biddy and their children. Gert Puritz and his daughter Joy are bringing out early next year a biography of Elisabeth Schumann, which almost brings her back to life again. I'm most grateful to Joy and Gert for letting me read and plunder a proof copy of this book for the purposes of the programme. I asked Gert if his mother was nervous before her performance.
Oh yes, very much so. She suffered from stage fright a great deal. She used to pace up and down the green room and drink lemonade, hot lemonade and so on, and muttering or singing scales, but then in between saying, "Oh, what a profession, what a profession." She was very... But the thing is, when she then came out onto the platform, after the first few bars, she regained her calmness, and she was somehow... The music was like a very safe road for her then, a safe path. Of course, very occasionally she was so nervous, and when she didn't feel well or had a cold, that of course there was a lot of frogs. There were a lot of frogs in her throat, and that of course was terribly disconcerting. But she usually carried through and got over this.
But she never really felt like giving up singing. I mean, it was her life.
Yes, it was her life. And she always maintained that one should be quite a bit tense before a concert. Otherwise, one couldn't give everything, she said. If you don't worry at all and it is just sausage to you, you wouldn't be able to give your best.
Gert Puritz. Elisabeth Schumann's operatic repertoire included the 5 main Mozart operas, the lighter roles in Wagner, Strauss, Michaela, Musetta, Marcellina in Fidelio, to Lehmann's Leonora usually, Gretel, German romantic classics like Tiefland and Zar und Zimmermann, Die Brautwahl of Busoni, in which she actually played the piano on stage, to Busoni's approval, after an audition had won him over. And in her earlier days she sang French operas such as Mignon and Faust. In Lieder, she sang a few English songs, but mostly stuck to the German and Austrian composers. She sang Bach, the Matthew Passion, and she took part in the first complete recording of the B minor Mass with Walter Widdup, Margaret Balfour, and Friedrich Shaw. The rather unlikely choice of conductor was Albert Coates, so good in Russian music. The performance is rather stolid, though Elisabeth Schumann brightens things up whenever she appears. But of course the soprano in that work sings only in duet. So for some Schumann in Bach, here's part of Cantata number 202, the Wedding Cantata, recorded 1939 in New York, but rather surprisingly using a harpsichord. part of Weichet nur, betrübte Schatten, from Bach's secular cantata number 202, the Wedding Cantata, Mitch Miller on the oboe. After World War II, things were not easy for Schumann. Dates came in, but not so plentifully as to be able to keep up with expensive living in New York. A good teaching job came up at the Curtis Institute, but didn't last as long as she had hoped. She appeared in America and Europe with considerable success, but she herself became somewhat dissatisfied, even though the top part of her voice stayed fine. It was the lower notes that weakened. She and Lotte Lehmann conferred on repertoire. Lotte said how hard it was to find enough lullabies. However, Schumann's public still adored her, even if her repertoire shortened, and the critics sometimes wrote adverse notices that she found herself inclined to agree with. In company, she retained her gaiety. There's a story of her lunching in Vienna just after World War II with two young rising stars called Schwarzkopf and Seefried. At one point, Seefried asked, "Madame Schumann, where do you get that remarkable C-sharp from?" "From the bum, my dear," Schumann answered. And of course it's true. It was her support, her diaphragm, that did so much of the work for her. But she also believed in mental imagination and subjective support. Madame Schumann again in person.
You know, one time I heard a rehearsal by the famous, perhaps the most famous conductor I ever have known, Arthur Nikisch. I was sitting in the rehearsal of the Gewandhaus in Leipzig. We had a wonderful orchestra, trained by him for years. But suddenly, I think it was Brahms, and he said, "Gentlemen, it is not beautiful what you do. It is not what I want. Play it more blue." More blue, I thought. It's just funny, the expression. They shall play blue. Also they began and played blue. But it was really a blue sound. And you saw the blue air, and you had imagination. You saw a blue sky suddenly. It was blue, you know. I never forgot it. And I think so often on it when I sing.
And at the end of the talk, my mother is infinitely gay, and then suddenly, sadly, valedictory.
A young pupil asked me if in this Lachcouplet, the laughing couplet in Fledermaus, should be this laughing to be sung or what should be done. She wouldn't know what to do. Oh, I said, it's wonderful you remind me of something, because I have a pupil in New York, and she's very gifted. But when she comes to this song, she sang first, "Ja, sehr komisch, ha, 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 ist die Sache, ha, ha, ha." But I said, "My dear, it is impossible. You must laugh. Can't you laugh?" "Yes," she said, "I can laugh, but not with singing together. But, my dear, it must come from inside. From your heart you must laugh. Ja, sehr komisch, ist die Sache, you know, like this. Have you understood? Also, you must sing and laugh together. The audience must laugh. Otherwise, when you sing, ha, 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 this is yeah horrible. People would say, what is that? I mean, not a laughing song. It's ja sad. Also, don't forget, laugh from your heart. Now, I think I have said enough. And I hope something for the young singers came out. And you remember. Goodbye.
That broadcast was made in 1951. Schumann died a year later, so it was almost goodbye. But it isn't goodbye here and now. So I would like to end the programme with a substantial chunk from the famous 1933 Viennese recording of an abridged Der Rosenkavalier. We heard part of it earlier on in this hour. Really, it was too bad that Richard Strauss himself demanded so much money to conduct that they had to call in Robert Hager to direct. But the orchestra is the Vienna Philharmonic, playing music that was in their very blood. The three ladies are Maria Olszewska in the trouser role of the rose-bearer Octavian, who by Act 3 has bypassed his lady friend the Marschallin, sung by the unforgettable Lotte Lehmann, in favour of the delectable young Sophie, played by Elisabeth Schumann. Lehmann leads off the famous trio, then Schumann's voice takes over the top line. Surely this trio must be about the most emotional, erotic purple patch in all opera, especially with these three singers and this orchestra. Then, after a 1933 recording hiccup, comes the final duet between Octavian and Sophie, simplicity in the two vocal lines countered by the Straussian glitter, chromatic chords on flutes, harps, and celesta. I always think it sounds rather like crystallized fruit. In the passage linking the two verses of the duet, you should have heard Lotte Lehmann as the Marschallin sing her farewell two-note phrase, "Ja, ja," but apparently Lehmann was late for the session that morning and missed the moment. All was not lost, though, for Schumann imitated her friend so perfectly that they decided to leave it on the wax for all time. So here's the final scene of Rosenkavalier, Strauss at his most sublime, with a cast of three ladies, the like of which we shall never hear again, with the beloved Elisabeth Schumann on the top line.